The crocodile rose beside him without sound. Its body broke the surface where water should have stayed empty. Nothing lunged. Nothing snapped. The stillness felt heavier than an attack. The river bend narrowed into a place that felt forgotten, the banks closing in with thick reeds and blackened mud that swallowed sound. He had stepped into the water without planning to, drawn by the quiet and the way the current slowed here, heavy and uncertain. The water reached his knees, cold enough to register but not enough to force retreat. No boats passed this stretch. No voices carried. Even insects seemed sparse, as if the land itself discouraged attention. When the water shifted beside his leg, it did not break the surface at first. It rolled, displaced by mass rather than speed, pushing gently against him as if testing space. He felt it before he saw it, the pressure steady and deliberate, and his body locked in place before thought could form. The crocodile surfaced without splash or warning, its head rising until both were breathing the same damp air. The distance between them collapsed into something intimate and dangerous, close enough that he could see the texture of its skin and the thin line of moisture along its jaw. Its mouth remained closed. Teeth stayed hidden. The eyes, dark and reflective, fixed on a point near him but did not sharpen with focus. They looked dulled by strain, not intent. He did not move his arms. He held them away from his sides, palms loose, knowing that sudden motion could invite the wrong kind of attention. His breath shortened, then slowed as he forced control into it. Scars marked the crocodile's flank in uneven paths, some fresh enough to still hold color against the rough hide. They did not follow the clean lines of age or territory. They crossed and doubled back, suggesting traps or blades rather than teeth. One foreleg dragged lower in the water, pulling against the current instead of cutting through it. Each movement cost effort. The water around the injured limb trembled as the crocodile adjusted its balance, not with power, but with careful correction. This was not the posture of a predator preparing to strike. It was the posture of something managing pain while trying to remain afloat. He became aware of how loud his own heartbeat sounded in his head. Every instinct trained into him insisted on retreat, on easing backward without breaking the surface, on leaving the space untouched. The rules of survival were simple and unforgiving here. Yet the crocodile did not coil its body or angle its head upward. Its tail barely moved, making small adjustments to keep it steady instead of driving force forward. The stillness unsettled him more than aggression would have. Silence pressed down until it felt physical, filling the narrow bend and holding both in place. The crocodile's head tilted slightly, not in challenge but in strain, as if the weight of it could not be carried comfortably for long. Pain showed in the tight angle of its neck and the way its body favored one side. The eyes remained open but distant, not tracking him in the precise way he expected. It held position beside him rather than in front, leaving him space instead of cutting it off. That choice registered slowly, cutting through fear with confusion. This was not an attack pattern. This was not hunger. He did not know how long they remained like that, sharing water and air without movement. Time stretched thin, marked only by the faint pull of the current against his legs and the shallow rise and fall of the crocodile's body. Any wrong motion could shatter the balance, and he felt the weight of that risk settle into his muscles. The encounter defied everything he understood about danger, rewriting it in quiet, unsettling ways. What had surfaced beside him was not a charge or a threat. It was something wounded and out of place, holding itself together in the only way it could, waiting in the narrow bend where it should never have been. He knew the margin between living and dying had narrowed to a single decision, measured not in distance but in timing. His legs tensed beneath the water, muscles ready to lift and retreat in one smooth motion if needed. The river pressed against him as if urging him to choose quickly. Instead of raising its head or widening its stance, the crocodile lowered its snout closer to the surface. The shift was small but deliberate. Its body turned at a slight angle, not toward him but away, opening a clear line back to the bank. The space it left felt intentional, like an exit offered without demand. That opening carried weight. It told him he was not being cornered. His pulse climbed anyway, pounding hard enough to blur the edges of thought. Reason argued in sharp, urgent fragments. Leaving required no courage, only movement. Staying required restraint and trust directed at an animal designed to end life with speed. The balance of that choice settled into his chest, heavy and unmoving. He watched the crocodile's sides rise and fall in shallow rhythm. Each breath came measured, controlled, as if effort was being rationed. Mud drifted past the crocodile's snout in thin streaks, carried by the slow current. The water around its head stayed calm, unbroken by sudden motion. The jaws remained sealed, the long line of its mouth relaxed rather than braced. He noticed how the eyes tracked him without sharpening, aware but not fixed. Nothing about the posture suggested preparation. It suggested waiting. His feet shifted beneath him as he tested the riverbed. Stones pressed unevenly through the mud, slick but stable enough to support weight if he moved slowly. He took one careful step closer, letting his heel touch down before the rest of his foot followed. Water rippled outward in low rings, spreading and then dissolving into the current. The sound felt loud in his ears. He stopped and waited for response. None came. The crocodile held position, tail steady, head still lowered. It did not draw back or advance. The space between them changed without tension rising. That absence of reaction steadied him more than any sign of retreat could have. He adjusted his breathing to match the pace of his movements, slowing each inhale and release until his hands stopped shaking. When he lowered himself, he did so inch by inch, bending one knee and then the other, keeping his center balanced and his posture open. He knelt with control, sinking closer to the waterline without splashing. His hands stayed visible, fingers loose, palms angled away from the crocodile's head. He was careful not to reach, not to cross into contact that had not been offered. The river pressed cool against his thighs, grounding him in the present moment. From this position, the crocodile's size became more apparent, its mass filling the narrow bend without effort. The awareness did not drive him back. It sharpened his focus. The air between them felt charged but stable, held together by restraint rather than force. He could leave even now. The path remained open. That knowledge did not vanish. It lingered, reminding him that the choice was ongoing, not fixed. The crocodile's stillness did not waver. Its breathing remained slow, shallow, controlled. The injured leg dragged slightly as it adjusted position, but the head stayed down, signaling no claim to dominance. Fear did not disappear. It shifted. It became quieter, less urgent, settling into the background where it could be acknowledged without control. The line between instinct and intention blurred until he could no longer separate them cleanly. What remained was presence. He stayed where he was, kneeling in the water, matching the crocodile's stillness with his own. Nothing dramatic marked the moment. No sound, no sudden change. Just two lives sharing the same narrow stretch of river, both holding back what they were capable of doing. The choice had been made not through force, but through restraint. In the space where violence should have risen, something steadier took hold, fragile and unspoken, waiting to be tested by what would come next. Night closed in faster than expected, pulled down by heavy clouds that erased the last trace of light from the river bend. Rain followed without warning, not a storm at first, but a steady fall that darkened the water and softened the edges of the bank. Mud loosened beneath his feet, turning solid ground into something uncertain. He adjusted his stance with care, testing each step before committing weight, aware that a slip could end everything. The crocodile remained close, its body low in the water, allowing itself to be guided toward the shallower edge where movement carried less risk. Working in the dim light required focus that pushed fear aside. He used his hands slowly, never reaching ahead of his intention, guiding the crocodile's injured side toward a place where the current weakened. The rain drummed against the surface, breaking reflections and hiding fine detail. When his fingers brushed against metal, he understood the source of the damage. A length of wire had cut deep into the foreleg, wrapped tight enough to bite into flesh with every movement. The metal was cold and unforgiving, pressed so far in that removing it would demand time he was not sure he had. He steadied his breathing and adjusted his position, lowering himself further into the water to keep balance. The crocodile tensed when he touched the wire, muscles tightening along its back. Its body shook under the strain of pain and confusion, energy held in check by stillness rather than force. The jaws stayed closed. The head did not turn toward him. The restraint felt deliberate, fragile, and easy to break if pushed too far. He paused, hands resting lightly, waiting for the tension to settle before continuing. Thunder rolled in the distance, low and distant, warning of worse weather to come. Each rumble reminded him that time was no longer generous. Rain thickened, blurring the line between river and sky. Water levels crept higher around his legs, pressing cold against his skin. He shifted closer to the bank, guiding the crocodile with small movements, letting it feel the direction without forcing it. The wire resisted at first, embedded by days or weeks of struggle. He worked it loose a fraction at a time, easing pressure rather than pulling. Every inch brought a reaction. The crocodile's body trembled, not in threat, but endurance. Its tail stiffened, then relaxed, adjusting to keep balance as pain flared and receded. He kept his movements slow and predictable, stopping whenever tension rose too sharply. Silence held between thunderclaps, filled only by rain striking water and the sound of breath moving through lungs. The river carried everything else away. When the wire finally shifted free enough to lift, dark blood spread into the water, clouding it in heavy streams. The sight did not provoke panic. The flow moved outward and thinned, absorbed by the current without violence. The crocodile held position through it all, breathing shallow but steady, eyes open and fixed on a point just past him. He completed the final movement with care, drawing the wire clear and letting it fall into the mud where it lay useless and forgotten. The change was immediate but restrained. The crocodile's body eased, tension releasing in small adjustments rather than sudden motion. The injured leg drifted more freely, no longer bound by metal. Rain continued to fall, but the moment felt sealed off from everything beyond the narrow bend. He did not move away. He did not reach again. Both remained still, sharing the aftermath without claim or celebration. Minutes passed unnoticed. Thunder faded farther into the distance. The river steadied as the worst of the rain eased. He stayed where he was, kneeling in the water, allowing the crocodile the space to decide its next movement. Survival had been shared in quiet cooperation, not through strength or dominance but through patience held under pressure. The night pressed close around them, holding what came next just beyond reach. Weeks moved forward without announcement, carried by routine rather than change. The river settled back into its usual rhythm, water levels lowering, banks firming again under dry days. He stayed away from the bend, not out of fear, but out of respect for what had occurred there. The memory traveled with him quietly, never pressing for attention, never asking to be explained. Life filled the space with ordinary demands, yet a thin layer of silence followed him through each day. It showed itself in moments that should have been empty but felt occupied, as if something unfinished lingered just out of view. Loss entered his life from directions unrelated to the river. It arrived without drama, through absence rather than event, and it slowed him in ways he did not anticipate. Mornings stretched longer. Evenings grew quiet sooner. He did not connect these changes to the night and the rain, but the weight of restraint he had learned there carried over into how he moved through the world. He spoke less. He listened more. The river remained where it had always been, flowing through the landscape without recognition of what had passed. One morning, drawn by habit rather than intention, he walked along the water's edge farther downstream. The air was clear, the surface calm, broken only by insects and drifting leaves. He kept his distance from the bend, stopping where the bank widened and the current smoothed out. He stood without expectation, hands loose at his sides, watching the slow movement of the river as it carried light and shadow together. When the water shifted, he noticed it immediately. The motion matched a pattern he remembered, subtle and controlled, shaped by mass rather than speed. The crocodile surfaced at a distance that allowed choice. It did not rise beside him or cut off space. It appeared where it could be seen without forcing reaction. The head broke the surface first, then the length of the body followed, steady and deliberate. Its movement held strength now, the injured leg moving in clean rhythm with the rest. Scars remained visible, pale against rough skin, but no longer fresh or raw. The posture was balanced, composed, neither guarded nor aggressive. He did not step forward or back. He remained where he was, letting the space between them exist without challenge. The crocodile held position, floating low in the water, eyes lifted just enough to meet his. There was no tension in the gaze, no narrowing or sudden focus. Awareness passed between them without demand. The river continued to move, indifferent to the exchange, carrying ripples past both as if nothing had interrupted its course. No sound marked the moment. No splash or breath signaled recognition. The stillness itself became the acknowledgement. He felt no urge to reach or signal. The distance remained intact, chosen rather than enforced. The crocodile stayed longer than necessary, holding the position for a measured breath that felt intentional without becoming dramatic. That pause carried weight without explanation, resting lightly between them. Then the crocodile turned. The movement was smooth, unhurried, guided by the same restraint that had defined every encounter before. Its body angled toward deeper water, tail sweeping once to adjust direction. The surface closed over its back as it slid beneath, leaving only faint ripples spreading outward. They widened and softened until the river returned to its uninterrupted flow. He stood alone at the bank, watching the water settle. Nothing followed him when he turned away. No proof remained beyond the memory he carried, quiet and complete. The certainty it left behind did not demand words or validation. It stayed fixed where it belonged, unchallenged by doubt, held in place by the knowledge that some moments exist fully without needing to return.